Hi, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to draw one of my favorite actor, Morgan Freeman. This specific drawing really owns a piece of my heart because it's the most realistic and detailed drawing I ever did as a tutorial. Plus, I've been waiting for a long time to draw something like this with as much details and realism as possible. And believe me, you are gonna learn so much from this. So grab your tools and let's get started. So these are the art supplies I'm going to use for this drawing, and you can pause the video right here to note them down. The paper I'm using is an ordinary hard white chart paper, and the drawing portion area is 13 x 16 inches. You can also use the Strathmore's 400 to 500 series smooth surface drawing paper or any other brand of paper, but make sure to get a paper which has a smooth texture free surface and has a thickness between 200 to 300 GSM. I'm already done with this rough outline and I use grid method to draw these outlines. You can find all the references including this outline grid reference on my Patreon profile. So before you start the drawing, make sure you mask the edges of the drawing area using a masking tape. It will help you get a straight and sharp border for your drawing. So first of all, I'm going to work on the background and I'm going to use this 3B graphite powder for the base layer. Just take a tissue paper and roll it like this and then use it to pick up the graphite powder. And sorry, I forgot to hit the record button in excitement before starting the shading process. All you have to do is use this circular or scribbling motion to fill the area with the shade. If you are shading with pencils, you would have to use a higher grade pencil like 5B or 9B to get your desired darkness in the background. But with the graphite powders, you can get the similar results with a lighter grade powder as well. It's easier to work with a lighter one because you can control the darkness and lightness with pressure technique. And by the way, the real-time video of this drawing is available on my Patreon profile. So if you want to see all these details up close and in real time, you can visit my Patreon profile. Link is in the description. The lower portions of the background are lighter, so I'm gonna keep a lighter pressure on the tissue while shading these portions. If you don't have these graphite powders, you can make them easily at home by watching this video from the cards. Okay, now I'm going to use a sharp tip eraser to make a proper outline for the hair. I'm just gonna use this scribbling motion to erase the shades. And I'm also going to use a 3B or 5B to make a proper outline for the hair in this lower portion as well. Okay, now I'm gonna use this B graphite powder with a bigger brush to add a base layer in the hair portion. You can use a tissue paper for this as well if you don't have a bigger and softer brush like this. I'll explain the proper method for drawing these type of white hair when I will start the right portion of the hair, because it really came out better than the top and left portion. So I would suggest you to wait and learn from my mistakes before starting your hair. I don't usually share mistakes in my tutorials, which makes it difficult to learn. So I thought I should share the do's and don'ts first. So this was my first time with these curly white hair and I tried different techniques to achieve the best result possible. For this left portion, I tried filling the area with a darker shade first and then used a 5B to fill the area with circular scribbles. Then I used a sharp tip eraser to add these white scribbles as base hair. But it was a mistake because I couldn't get the perfect contrast of black and white hairs when I added the final layer of white hair using a jelly roll pen. So I had to add the black hairs again using a 5B and then add the white hairs again using a jelly roll pen and repeated the same process again and again to get the perfect results that I wanted. So I think the use of sharp tip eraser here is not a good idea. I also used a 9B graphite powder to add a darker shade around the outline of the hair because it gets lighter when you add and blend these individual hairs around the outline. And by the way, if you are a beginner and have no idea how to even start a drawing on your own, I would suggest you to take my drawing course first because it is specially designed to help beginners like you to get comfortable with the drawing process so they can execute a drawing project of any difficulty level on their own. I put my course on sale for up to 90% off for 5 days of every month. You can check the link in the description to see if the sale is going on right now and get enrolled as soon as possible. So after a lot of modification, I achieved a good result in this left portion. But I was still confused with the technique. So for this middle portion, I added a dark layer with powder and then added these white hairs directly on the shade instead of adding black hairs first. which was again a mistake because I couldn't get a good amount of contrast after blending the white hairs. Another mistake I made here was blending the shade with a tissue paper. I added the shade using a small brush, which was a good decision, but when I blended the areas with tissue paper, all the white hairs were gone, so I had to add another layer of white hairs and then use the brush again to blend the hairs where required, and also used a 5B to fill the in-between portion with black hairs and dots. I also used a kneaded eraser in between to add the highlights on the hairs, and it worked really well. Because the white pigment from jelly roll pen is a little bit slippery and graphite doesn't stick to it properly. So if you dab it lightly with a kneaded eraser, it will pick up graphite from the white lines only, leaving a good shiny highlight on the white hairs. Okay, so the technique that works really well for these type of white hairs is the one that I used in this right portion. You can use the same technique for the top and left hair portions in your drawings. The basics will be the same. So all you have to do is fill the area with a dark layer using the graphite powder. You can use pencil as well for the shading, but you will have to keep the pressure lighter and also blend it afterwards. This side of head has more shadows and less highlights, so I'm gonna fill all the area with similar amount of dark shade. But if you are working on the top or left side, you need to keep the highlights in mind as well. Okay, now use your 5B pencil and fill the area with these type of circular scribble or hair. Again, you need to vary the intensity of these scribbles according to your need. This portion is in shadow, so I'm filling accordingly. Okay, now use the jelly roll pen to add the white hairs. This specific portion near the forehead has a little bit of wavy hair instead of curly hair, so I'm gonna fill accordingly. But the remaining portion will be filled with curly hairs as I did in the previous portions. Just like this. Now use a bigger brush like this and lightly blend these extra bright hairs, and also use a smaller brush in between to add depth in the hair. Then use a 3B or 5B pencil to add some dark hairs in between where required, and in the end use a kneaded eraser to add these type of highlights on white hairs, and add shadows or depth again using a smaller brush with graphite powder. Just like this. You can repeat these steps until you are satisfied with your results, and that's it. You can follow these simple steps for all the other portions with curly white hairs. Okay, so moving on to the forehead portion, and first of all I'm gonna darken the outlines for the shadowed areas and wrinkles as well, and then use a B shade as a base layer for the forehead. Again, you can use the pencils and brush if you are new to the graphite powder shading. Or you can also use a tissue paper if you don't have bigger brushes like this. Now use a 3B pencil and add the second dark layer on the forehead, and then blend it using a dry brush. Then use a 5B pencil to further darken the shadowed corner portions along the wrinkles in the middle, just like this, and also blend this layer using a dry brush. Now use your 8B or 9B pencil and add the final darker layer in these shadowed corner portions. Thoroughly fill the shade in the corner portions and don't worry too much about the hairs. You can always add more using jelly roll pen later. Okay, so now I'm gonna use the jelly roll pen and add these type of dots and texture on these highlighted portions of the skin. Just like this. If you don't have a jelly roll pen, you can use a whitener or correction pen for this purpose. But make sure the dots are smaller or else the texture will look messy. For the portions where the highlights are brighter, like this area above the wrinkles, the size of the dots will remain the same, but you need to decrease the spacing in between them to make them look brighter. You can also add some white lines and texture in the middle portion using a mono zero eraser. It will help you get good overall highlights and contrast. You can add them after the dots as well, but then you will have to correct and add the dots again. So the best way is to add these white lines first using a mono zero eraser and then fill the area with these white dots. Now use a smaller dry brush to blend and lighten these extra white dots and make them look more like a shiny skin texture. I'm going to give the hairline a proper start by adding these individual hairs and then blending them lightly to merge them with the others. And also use your 8B or 9B to add this black skin texture near the corners. And also use your 5B to add these skin moles and stuff, and then use your jelly roll pen to add highlights on them to make them look more shiny and 3D looking. Now I'm going to repeat the same shading and texturing process on this third segment of the forehead. And the only difference is in the middle portion, as the direction of the white dots and lines is tilted toward the nose. So you have to fill the area accordingly. Also, I'm going to add the small thin lines as well using a sharp tip 2H pencil. You can skip this step if you want. This left portion near the shadow has a little bit different texture because it's a mixture of thin wrinkles and skin texture. So you can add these type of parallel but segmented lines to get this type of texture. And again, you can always blend or re-add the texture where required to get your desired results. Okay, so now I'm going to start the eye portion, and first of all I'm going to darken the outlines so they don't fade away in the shading process. And then I'm going to fill the area with a base layer using a B pencil and then blend it using a dry brush. Now I'm going to erase the shades from the eyebrow portion in order to fill it with indentation lines. So before the indentation, make sure you add these type of small and light helping lines to guide you during the indentation process. Because as you know, it's a one-time process and you cannot erase or modify an indentation line easily. Okay, now grab this nail art dotting tool and use its smaller size as an indenting stylus to add these thin indentation lines along the helping line you just added. And then fill the area using a 5B pencil, and also use the same 5B to fill these shadowed portions around the eye, especially in this left corner and around the wrinkles as well. And then use your 8B to fill the eyeball and also darken the outline of the eyelid. And then use your dry brush to blend these layers lightly, just like this. So after blending, you might need to add another layer of 5B and further darken the shadowed portions and wrinkles, etc. to get your desired amount of depth. Also fill the corner of sclera or this white portion of the eye using a lighter grade pencil like B or 2B, and then add the small eyelashes for the lower eyelid using a sharp tip 5B pencil. Then use a round tip 8B or 9B to add the skin moles and stuff. Lightly blend any rough shades using a small dry brush, and then use a chisel tip mono 0 razor to erase the extra shades from the indentation lines and make them look more prominent. You can also use your gel roll pen for this purpose. Now use your gel roll pen to add the small dots and lines for the skin texture around the eye where required. Again, make sure you add the smallest dots possible and increase or decrease the spacing between them to get your desired amount of brightness or highlights. You can also use your mono 0 eraser in between to add light highlights or erase extra dark shades where required. And in the end, use a small dry brush to lightly blend these extra bright dots and highlights to get a good looking skin texture. Okay, now moving on to the second eye, and the overall process is similar to the first one. The only experiment I did was in the eyebrows. I tried skipping the indentation part and used the gel roll pen to add the white hairs, but it was not a good idea as I had to add them again and again whenever I tried adding black lines in between or dark shade over them. So if you wanna skip the indentation part and use the gel roll pen for white hairs, I would suggest you to add the black hairs and dark shade first, and then add the white hairs in the end, so you don't have to add them again and again. This was actually a 20-hour long drawing which took me about 30 days to complete, and I had to split this tutorial video into two parts because people don't usually watch longer videos, and the video fails to get the amount of attention it deserves. So please leave a like if you enjoyed and learned something new from this first part. The second part will be available next week. If you wanna get the real-time video of this drawing, you can visit my Patreon profile. And if you are a beginner and want to learn the basics of sketching, you can join my course on Udemy. All the links are in the description down below. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.